Welcome, everyone. My name is Matthew. I am one of the co-founders of Toronto DAO and also your weekly host for the Toronto DAO Space. Super excited to have Annelise Osborne as our guest. She wrote a fantastic book. I can't wait to ask a bunch of questions about it, and it looks like we're getting a big crowd coming in. So welcome, Annelise.
Thank you so much for having me here. I'm really excited to be here. I was saying this is my first Twitter Spaces where it's just me and you. I was on a panel ages ago where there were, I think, 6 of us speaking, so it was really hard to get a word in. But yeah,
I would like to do a panel that one day. So that's next. But hopefully soon, and then you can listen in and see how I do.
Oh, I'll cheer you all on. I love to learn, so I do love to listen to conversations.
That's perfect. So why don't we get this? Why don't you give a bit of backstory about yourself? You've got quite the journey. You've got you had the suit on. You were doing the traditional finance, and now you made the jump to the I don't know how to describe our clothing. Somebody once told me that we dress like the Capitol in the Hunger Games.
I don't know how to dress anymore. I feel like I can't wear either. I never really wore hoodies so much, but I definitely can't wear suits. But yes, yeah, it's kind of funny to think about fashion, but it is also interesting to see, like, go to some crypto events and people are all in suits. Like, I don't know. Probably less the developers, but it changes. But the industry is morphing. I also feel like, because I don't know when you got in. I got in probably 17, 18, and it was definitely hoodies.
Yeah, I do see more suits coming now, but like I feel those people are they're making the transition, right? Okay, they do the suit, but then they take off the tie. And then the next time they take off the jacket. And then okay, well, we'll do the jacket and then the jeans. And it's like withdrawal. They can't do it all at once, but they can do it bit by bit. And then in a couple years they'll be wearing the Hunger Games outfit.
Well, I do think it mimics the way that we look at the industry, though, if you think about it, right? So it was this amazing technology, which is what, 3.4 trillion. I don't know what today's market cap is. It was created really by the hoodies and the whole idea of what this technology can do. But I do think that really it's like tying in with the suits about how do we use regulation, not just regulation, but people that have kind of run businesses before or look at it a different way, that kind of come from a different mindset to take it to the next level. And I'm so excited to see what's happening in 2025 with the institutions building and the whole. I don't think the crypto industry is institution, but I do think that blockchain technology can underlie the capital markets of kind of tomorrow. And I think we're going to see more and more of that, of all the projects that are coming out. So it's super exciting to be part of it.
I know this wasn't what we were initially going to talk about, but do you mind me asking if you have a specific industry that you think blockchain can revolutionize?
Well, obviously finance is kind of because if you think about crypto is generally finance too. But I also feel like there's so many things kind of in supply chain, back office, but really number one of payments. I think payments is, the first killer use case. It's easier to adopt because there's instant decrease in expenses. That I think for anything there has to be a way to either make money or save money, because everything is a business oriented, right? And so I think payments is the first for cross-border transactions to be able to decrease fees, both from actually crossing borders, but also decrease fees in currency exchanges, right? So I think that is going to be the first step. But look what we just saw in Circle, and look how we're seeing the adoption of different stable coins, and even countries looking at CBDCs. And what I think is interesting is, if you ask, there's a bunch of countries kind of, outside the United States, even in the Middle East, that are looking at CBDCs really because of cross-border transactions, which I had never thought about. So I learned so much, right, from talking to different people, but I had never really thought about CBDCs having to worry about cross-border transactions, because I think central banks, because central banks, I would think, were much worried more about kind of inter the country. But anyway, so I'm told, at least.
No, I agree with the payment platform. Second would also be supply chain, which you also messaged, just because it costs like $10 to send like $80 to your family back home, right? And that's a lot of money. And even for like big, like you're talking about $1 million, it's cheaper to just get on a plane with a suitcase full of it. I mean, there's some whole bunch of customs issues that we won't get into, but I think in the times of text messaging, emailing, streaming, we still don't really know how to send money. We're still using Swift, which has barely evolved from the 70s.
Well, also, it's hard to open a bank account again outside the United States. There's different countries where it's hard. People don't have accounts, but it's easier to open a wallet, and so it's just easier to transact. So I will admit, yesterday I was looking just to kind of play with sending money, but I was looking to invest in both. I was trying to transfer money both Fidelity and Robinhood just to see what it took. And Fidelity said it would take 10 days for that money to settle, right? Transferring from my bank account that's already linked in. And Robinhood allowed me to do some instant transaction that you could click through with a bunch of clicks through Robinhood in your bank. So that I thought was interesting too, right? You're trying to put it into some sort of investment account, and the whole idea of what we can do with blockchain and crypto, it takes those layers away and everything's immediate.
Yeah, we are also spoiled here in Canada too with the terms of like being able to open your bank account. Because I used to work in one of the banks here in Canada, and the law was that anybody with an ID had to be granted a bank account, even if because I worked in fraud, so there were people who literally committed tons of fraud, and then they would go, "Can I open a bank account?" And we'd give them a lot of restrictions, but yeah, they could open a bank account.
When I lived in London, I had to my company had to write a letter to the bank to allow me to open a bank account. So it's just different everywhere you go.
Yeah. So you're from traditional finance, but you're now in the Web3, and you've written this book. What led you to write it? Why don't you tell us a bit about this book first, and then tell us why you decided to write it?
I wrote a book called From Hoodies to Suits: Innovating Digital Assets for Traditional Finance. The whole goal was really for education. So I started in the space in 2017, 18. I was originally asked to join the board of a regulatory task force, and I wasn't as familiar with ICOs at the time, which is the real focus. And so what is blockchain and what can it do? And studying it really opened my eyes about how, wow, this makes sense. I'm sure all of finance is already moving on to blockchain, or it's happening, and it really wasn't. And so then it was kind of like, how can I help? And so I ran a broker dealer my partner had a broker dealer, and we launched kind of digital asset securities way back when. I guess you could call it a failed startup because it's not around today, but it was a wild ride and it was super fun. Learned a lot, actually launched some digital assets. One paid in DAI. There was a private placement actually for stablecoin. If you think about it, it was a mezz loan. So lots of fun things in trying to figure out the structure and how do we build. There's not a lot of people to ask, right, when you're starting out in innovation. And so those were really fun times and yet trying times as well, because I'll admit I did not make money for that year because I was a founder. So then I moved on I worked at Arca. We had a tokenized treasury fund. We were also a hedge fund, and we got hit in Luna, unfortunately. And then FTX happened, and it was just a really tough year. I was more on the lab side. We had created a tokenized treasury fund that you could in essence hold your cash collateral and you could generate yield. Obviously there's a lot more around now. But what to me was an eye opener is after FTX was really just the lack of education about crypto and blockchain being so tied, and FTX fault being crypto. And I think FTX was a bad actor situation. I also think it was more inexperienced people getting over their skis, right? The whole idea of hoodies without suits around. So we didn't have the risk or compliance. We didn't have kind of the board or corporate governance. And I thought, well, I had in my head these ideas of how I wanted to share that. And I wanted ideally Bob, the finance guy, to understand why this technology is so great and what it can do. And so that's what I wanted to do. And so I tried to figure out how to write a book. I never thought I would write one. And I found someone to help me. So I hired someone to help me to figure it out. Put a book proposal together, reached out to the publisher, had the deal within 6 months. And then I left Arca and I wrote it. And then I was trying to figure out kind of what's next. How can I participate? Which is how I ended up where I am today, which I love. I figured I could make a difference either on the institutional side or on the tech side. because I think that there's a different language that's spoken between the hoodies and the suits, for example, if we're using that analogy. So I wanted to kind of bridge that gap. And I had this great opportunity to join Cardano, which is a layer 1 proof of work blockchain. And here we are. Oh, the book came out last year, by the way. So yes, it did. It's been out for almost a year. I'm happy to answer questions. If anyone has questions, if anyone wants a copy, ping me. I'm happy to share.
Wow, that's very generous of you. And yeah, we'll definitely open this up to questions towards the end for those who want to. So can you define the hoodie and define a suit? Like what sets them apart?
Oh, so I would really think that, the hoodie is the thought of the technology or entrepreneur that comes up with these great ideas. I do think it's very difficult to generate ideas or real innovation within institutions, because institutions generally are more structured, and that's kind of the more suits approach. And so I really think you need both for this to thrive, or any company to really thrive. If you look at Mark Zuckerberg, he turned into a suit. He was at Harvard before, admittedly. And he's the first analogy that I use, is that he always wears hoodies, but then when he went to testify for Congress, he wore a suit. And so it kind of shows the progression, right? And so that's what it is for me. The hoodies is the entrepreneurial idealist and technology person. And then the suits is really more focused on the standardization of like the institutional side, which could be compliance oriented. It could be actually finance or regulation, but it's just kind of that it's the idea of standards and structure.
Yeah, you bring up a good point. Like, especially with the whole FTX thing, I do believe SBF was a bad actor, but there was also he was surrounded by like 20, 30-year-olds who probably were in over their head, and they probably could have used a few suits, right, to tell them, hey, this is not okay. And like I said, I used to work for one of the big banks here, and I felt it was too restrictive, right? And I needed, just for an example, my $5 mouse broke, and I needed to track down my director to sign a form to get a replacement mouse. It wasn't a laptop, it was a desktop. So I couldn't even, it was not only the lost work that I didn't really do that day for not having a functional computer, but also like all the director, who was making like 5 times my salary, he had to waste his time like getting this mouse, and it was a $5 mouse. You think that I could just get a $5 mouse with in a closet or something.
Well, yeah, I totally get it. There's kind of one would think that's a bit of waste, but the idea is they're trying to cut out waste. So I kind of see why they did it, but you would think there would be some sort of petty cash around or something easier that's already set up for that. So it's kind of finding the in between, right? Because that can't be the way any startup or any even mid-sized company is run. I feel like anything that's trying to grow, it's definitely not a growth mindset. I feel like that's much more of a longer schooled insurance more company that's a bit more I guess probably a little bit more cost controlled environment.
Yeah, and but then again, sometimes the hoodies, maybe they can build something, but they don't know anything about the laws.
Yeah, or just kind of expanding the companies. If you think about, some of the some companies that have tried to expand too quickly, for example, or it's just really helpful to have experience, right? Generally it's the younger generations that have more ideas and inspiration, and then it's the older generations that have more experience. It's really figuring out together, how do we work together to move forward?
So you mentioned Mark Zuckerberg, how he was a hoodie and sort of transitioned to a suit. Do you think that people are doing more the opposite, from suits to hoodie, or from hoodies to suits?
Well, I know a lot of suits that have come into the industry. And if you think about it, most every crypto company has someone that worked at Goldman Sachs, I feel like. So there's definitely both sides of it. I think a lot of it is just recognizing the benefits of what crypto offers. And I think crypto can be broken into like crypto and digital assets. I know that digital assets is technically crypto, but the idea of like how can we do a bond on blockchain is one thing, but also how can we trade all the different coins that are out there. So I think the first step was all of the traders going over, because the traders were trading anyway, and then you can go trade cryptocurrencies were much more volatile and had potentially more upside than dealing with different types of stocks. So I do feel like there were a lot of people that jumped out of direct finance to go into that. But I also feel like, sometimes I think it's probably a little harder. It's hard to switch between them now that I think about it, right? So it depends, like your mentality and your personality a little bit. You can, obviously. But I do think, people do go a bit both ways, right? You have people that have been hoodies and very innovational and then gone to larger institutions. So yeah, but I think this industry, you need both. You definitely need the startup mindset, though. That's the thing that suits have sometimes a hard time with. For example, what you were talking about with the mouse is that this is the way that we do it. So you have to have a flexible mindset if you're a suit to go into a startup to say, how do we build and grow? We have to build and, we've got to be fast, but we have to stay within regulation. So I feel like that's a special type of person.
Yeah. And I feel like if we had this conversation 10 years ago, I would have told you I was a suit, but I feel like I was a suit, like a hoodie in the closet, so to speak, because I wasn't really thrilled with that type of atmosphere. And I put on the suit. I wore the suit. I don't think I have a suit anymore, but yeah, that's how I feel personally.
Cool. How'd you get into the space?
So basically, I was in Canada for a time. We had contract work, right? And it was very normal for you to have an end date before you even started your job. Like your first day is on the 1st, and then a year later, your last day would be on the same month, but on the 3rd or something. It was just a way to not pay benefits, give you sick days, stuff like that. And they could essentially lay you off with no financial repercussions. And so I was at this bank. They acquired an American bank. So just around the time my contract was up. And so bad timing, basically, there was no money to renew. And I was just looking at different industries to go into. And Bitcoin was going through it was not pennies, but, not a lot of money to like 20 grand in the span of like 6 months. So that was all over the news. And so I decided to get more into it. I moved to Buenos Aires for a bit, but I was always, reading up on it on the side. And I came back just as COVID hit, and I was out of a job again, and everybody was staying at home. And I kind of decided to go from like part-time crypto to full-time by taking a program at the local college here. Yeah, and I haven't looked back since.
Cool.
Yeah. Not as interesting journey as yours, but a journey nonetheless.
We all have our kind of stories, and so each one is interesting, and they're just different.
Yeah, and like I said, I also going back to the payment. I watched a lot of transactions because sometimes the transactions would be fraudulent, and most of them were, but sometimes they'd be misclassified as fraudulent. And it would just be that they were bounced back because a clerk mistyped something on their keyboard. And that mistake, that typo, would cost the bank like $2,000.
I worked at Moody's and I worked in structured finance, which is just loads and loads of loads and loads of loans being together and put out as bonds. And that would happen in remittance statements, right? That something would be wrong because someone had input it wrong in a Excel spreadsheet because someone had transferred it over. And so bonds were paid incorrectly, and then they had to go back and not reissue them, but adjust. So totally, that's what blockchain will save.
Yeah, especially with like when you're doing international payments with converting the money, because some of these transactions would be hundreds of thousands of dollars. And so even a minor discrepancy could be like a $5,000 difference that the bank would have to reimburse.
Yeah, it's funny to think about pennies, right? Like,
Yeah. Like if I convert $100 tomorrow, it might be like a penny or something. But if I convert $100,000, which I don't have, but some do, it turns into like a few $100.
so what do you do at Toronto DAO? Tell me a little about that.
So I work part time as Toronto DAO. I co-founded it with Samir, who is listening in right now, um, and someone else named Antoine, who's been in this crypto space for a long time. And it was hard to come up with a direction for the DAO at first because there's no real community DAO, if I'm being honest. Like, or there's some that have tried and they have failed, which is fine. You can't be afraid of failure in order to just keep you from trying. But it also means there's no magic template for you to follow, right? Because I'm an MBA, and during your MBA, you go through all these case studies, and that's to try to teach you how to, or to set a standard for how you should operate in the real world, right? And I feel like there isn't that for a DAO. So there are times we've gone back and forth on what that's like, and now we've really focused on the tech community here in Toronto, because we like to point to like a 30-year-old smartphone, the BlackBerry, as like one of the Southern Ontario's crowning achievements.
I did love the
Um,
BlackBerry though. It was so much.
but
I was
who
so much faster to type, but yes.
who owns one, right? Um, I don't even think they make them anymore.
They
And
Sorry, yes. They were great, but I feel like they're dated.
yeah, and so like, are we really still pointing to this 30-year-old phone as our crowning achievement? And we need to come up with something newer. And there's also factors of, like, so Ethereum was also a Toronto-born project, but um, they've all left. You
So
know,
now it's DAOs.
so well, now we're just trying to make it like, why do these people have to leave? Why can't they stay here? And so we're starting small with mostly with community projects right now. We try to have regular events where we get people from like different sectors. We had one with sponsored by the Canadian exchange BitBuy a couple weeks ago. And I thought that was really cool because despite a crypto exchange sponsoring it, I met a lot of people who had zero knowledge of crypto. Like I met a technology journalist who just wanted to see what we were doing. So I feel like we're starting to grow beyond the crypto space, which was our main goal. Crypto was our low hanging fruit, but now people outside of the industry are starting to notice.
Cool.
But yeah, like this is part time. I work mostly in AI full time, but this is a project that I've been passionate about for a while, and we've been doing this for about a few years now. But we've really taken off, I would say, in the past year. That's when a lot more people have noticed us.
That's great. So, where do you see the industry going? Where do you
In the so crypto or tech?
just in crypto? It's kind of like, for whoever's listening, like what would be interesting. And since we're crypto oriented, like where do you see it going? I guess for Toronto or for what you're working on.
So I feel I've always found like the Ontario sort of leads the legal space in our country, and unfortunately, the province just seems to copy and paste this SEC laws. So if the SEC doesn't like it, the Ontario Security Commission doesn't like it.
Mhm.
So I find that it's kind of frustrating when I see an American law I don't like because I know we're just going to copy it. And I would like us to not be afraid to take the jump, whether the US does it or not. I believe we're a separate entity, and maybe the US does something good or maybe it does something bad, but the SEC has been largely anti-crypto the past 4 years. They dropped a lot of suits, but for the most part, I found it's been very anti-crypto. And I don't think we should be anti-crypto by default.
So I do think that the world is changing. I think that if I think in the United States, with the new administration and the new people that are running the agencies, we just had the head of the SEC recently say how tokenization is really the next innovation for finance. And so I think we'll see a lot of a different approach than we did before. If you think about last year, it was much more, or previously, we did a lot of regulation by enforcement, right? So we didn't actually tell them what they couldn't do, but if they did, like, we'd listen, and then if they did it, then we would, give them a Wells notice, which is means that the SEC is in essence subpoenaing them. So I think what we're seeing now is both the regulators being much more open to figuring out how to work within innovation. We don't want to lose innovation in the United States, which really is, the global superpower. And it's been a brain drain with people leaving because they can't work here. I think there's that. And then I also feel that within institutions. So I was at Davos this year and listening to the top CEOs of the largest banks and asset managers. All of them mentioned tokenization. Now, all of them aren't necessarily doing tokenization, but they all talked about it. And for me, that was kind of an eye opener. Because the year before was really AI oriented. And so I feel like we're definitely getting the attention. I think it's being recognized. So I do think we'll see a lot of growth. At least the US will come up with plans for growth. We have the Genius Act with stablecoins coming through DC. There's other acts on digital assets as well. So what the United States really needs, I think, is guardrails. We need to have kind of a black and white as opposed to playing in the gray, which is a term I've used before, because institutions can't play in the gray. They need to know what the rules are. And even non-institutions, like anyone that's running money or a fiduciary, really needs to understand that. So I'm really excited about this year because I think that leads to additional growing and new projects coming. If you look at all the stablecoin projects we have now that we didn't have 2 years ago, or even money market funds and the expansion of, AUM we have for that, it's really exciting.
Yeah, and I've always, a lot of people have always seen us as like a lawless society, and like we want rules, but like you said, they said what isn't allowed, but not what is. So a lot of these institutions would just go in, be like, I hope we're not breaking any rules. They literally they couldn't confidently do anything without wondering if they're going to be sued or not.
So I'm at Cadena now, layer 1 proof of work, and we are seeing a lot of activity. We're building out both our crypto side and our kind of tokenization side. I'm a huge believer that TradFi and DeFi will merge. I think if you look at what private credit is in the TradFi world, that's very similar to DeFi in the crypto world. So I think it's just it's steps to get there. We're also working with one of the regulators about how we can do a pilot on a DeFi pilot in a regulated way or a regulated approved way, which I know kind of goes against the idea of crypto. But in the same sense, I feel like it's a step. So we're seeing a lot from the tokenization side. We're seeing a lot of activity in Europe, actually. And I think that is probably because there's more. Europe had micro rules before, and so there's probably a little further along in the growth of some of those projects. But we're also seeing a lot of activity and new projects in the United States. But I feel like that Europe is probably a little bit more grown. We're also seeing a lot out in Asia. So from a tokenization perspective, we have tokenized funds, we have stablecoin, we have stablecoin projects. They haven't launched yet. We have supply chain projects. We have fan engagement projects. We're really working on building out our DEXs as well, because I feel like that is important to build out an active crypto ecosystem, as well as building out kind of the TradFi or tokenization ecosystem as well. But it's exciting to see all these projects and have daily conversations with people that kind of spur your mind to think, oh, this is great, right? This is the next step. This is where we're going to.
Yeah, it is fun to see some of the outside projects as well. And I do feel like these ETFs, I also like that it's getting people's attention. I don't think people or most of the people in the space would ever use the ETFs, but I like the attention that it's bringing to our industry. And
But
I
you
feel like
say
anything.
that. So I've been looking at kind of Washington, D.C. and what they're buying. And I know this sounds funny, but it's kind of like different investment opportunities. And what's so interesting is the Bitcoin ETF is it's one of the top buys in Washington. Isn't that funny? That's just like, that's kind of the people that we think have been holding us up for so long. So there is a world out there of people that really want the ETFs. That's not even the RIA world, like people for their retirement accounts that want to have some sort of exposure, but do it in a regulated world. And I'm really sorry I jumped in there. I was just really excited.
No, I get that. I think my mom has thought about it, like getting, because the ETFs have been around in Canada for a while, but there's no way she's not really tech oriented, right? So her literally buying Bitcoin, I don't think she could pull that off. And I feel like with these ETFs, she'd be more likely to buy those.
But also, that's the idea of we need to create an opportunity of a Web 2 like experience in a Web 3 world. So if you look at PayPal and the PayPal app, you can open it up and you can use stablecoin, right? You can buy crypto on Robinhood. Not that I'm promoting any of these, but it's just like that. That's what I was, anyway. So I feel like as long as they can as long as it's easy for them, they can do it. If you think about kind of before when we had ETH scan and things were super clunky, and things still can be clunky, but if we can offer an opportunity for people to not realize they're using different rails and still be able to participate, like PayPal USD, right? They can open up the app they already have. They already have an account, and they can send something through, or they look at kind of Bitcoin as an investment and they can go onto their Robinhood account and buy crypto very easily. So I feel like we're getting to the point, like it's scary if they have to open wallets and they have to go through different routes than they're used to, versus like going into Fidelity and buying the ETF, which is probably what my mother would have my mother would do that too. If she would invest in Bitcoin, which she's not necessarily investing in Bitcoin, but she's also, in her 80s. But what is interesting, if we talk about that, I'm sidelining, and I also go on rants, so I apologize. You can pull me back as you want to.
This is great.
But if you think about all these people that are so we're talking about my mom who's in her 80s and she's not buying crypto, but the money, my mom, like the boomer generation is giving all their money to millennial and Gen Z, and millennial and Gen Z more or less own half of the money in the ecosystem now. It will be a majority of the ecosystem of all of the money out there that will be millennial and Gen Z hands. Now they think very differently. It is a natively digital generations, both of them. They were born with a supercomputer being their phone in their hand. And what that allows them or the expectation of everything being more digital is really, we can back all that with blockchain. And so we can back all that with crypto. It's a very different shift of where all this money is going and who's going to be making the decisions from an investment perspective, or even running the companies, making it from an institutional perspective, because they're more used to it and it's more in their comfort zone than, say, someone that is old school Wall Street or what have you, that just doesn't want change. Look at the floor of the New York Stock Exchange. I know I said this before too, but look, the floor of the New York Stock Exchange used to be shoulder to shoulder. It was bustle. It's the only place you could go to trade stocks. Now it is empty. Right? It's empty, not because people aren't trading stocks. It's empty because technology has upgraded the system. And so blockchain technology and crypto is the next upgrade to the system. It is faster, cheaper, and more secure. So I feel like it's inevitably happening. So it's exciting to see the progress that we're making, at least, this recently in the United States, about opening ourselves to accept this.
You mentioned like we need a Web 2 experience, and it's funny because I have a little anecdote. I have a close friend in Bolivia, and they have this situation where it's now illegal to buy dollars, except you could for a while send it abroad. And she would send it abroad to me, and then I would send it back to her using a system, and she'd sell the dollars for a heavy profit. But she had no idea that she was using crypto to do this.
Exactly. I think that's the way we'll move forward.
It was using a US dollar coin, right? USDC. And I think we've done it a few times, and I think off just keeping conversation, like, oh, I see like Olivia's really getting into crypto now, and you're getting kind of like you're getting into it yourself. And she's like, what do you mean? I'm like, what, you're using crypto to do this? And she's like, I am. Like, literally just was using this app for apparently like a year and had no idea that she was using crypto this whole time.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. And I think that's how a lot of it's going to work. We're working with their Croatia football federation, and they have a fan token, and people don't realize it's a token, right? They just recognize there's a lot more benefit to being able, like, there's a lot more usability and benefit for what they have when they sign up on their app. Versus recognizing that it's actually backed by blockchain. So I think we're going to have a lot of that. For example, this is a funny story, I think. I went to teach FIT, Fashion Institute of Technology in New York City, asked me to come teach a class because they were using my book, which again blew my mind, in their syllabus for their blockchain class because they have
That's
a blockchain
awesome.
class. And it was hysterical for me because I thought, oh my God, what am I going to wear? Because I'm not very fashion forward. But I figured that out. I got past that. And it was really interesting to do the research about what's happening in the fashion industry. And most of the major brands are all using NFTs, right? They just don't talk about it, but they're using it really for counterfeit. They're trying to combat counterfeit. And so they're in essence doing similar to the supply chain. If you look at tracking like digital product passport, we're working with digital product passport in Europe as well, which is a regulation that's coming into play soon to track the lifespan of products. And so that's really what they're doing here. And it's just interesting to see they count, like, I think at the time I was doing it, Diesel had just found 150,000 counterfeit bags by using their NFTs. Right.
Wow.
So there's so many different use cases that people don't realize that they're using this technology, but it's just faster, cheaper, more secure. And also, there's something called invoice factoring. So there's a whole bunch of people that actually can't get, like, invoices take 60 days to pay, but they're supposed to pay their people every week, right? Or every other week. And so there's a way that you can actually, so generally what happens is companies will buy them. They have to pay, say, 3%. So that's 36% per year, right? On the invoices. So that makes all of this much more expensive, but it uses blockchain. And so since they're using stablecoin and it's faster, which very much decreases the interest rate, the end user is paying 2% instead of 3%. So they're very happy. They don't know they're using blockchain. And then the blockchain systems are making money off it as well. So there's a whole bunch of different ways it can be used that people don't realize this is crypto backing it. So super excited about even more use cases that are coming up. And the whole world of derivatives. There's going to be so much when we can collateralize RWA tokenization projects. So much more we can do with that too. So I'm excited about where we're going. It's just building the blocks now to put in place to actually be able to, like, extend or play in another 5 years. And I'm not saying it's going to take 5 years. I'm just going to say we're going to be so much further along in 5 years from a, like, financial markets perspective with what we can do.
Yeah. A friend of mine once compared it to like winning the lottery in slow motion. It's sort of like, we'll get there. We just, we have the winning ticket. It's just, we can't cash it for a while.
So I also think every overnight success takes 7 years, right? You don't see the first 7, even like Amazon, before you'd ever heard of it. It's not when it started. It just takes a while to build and grow. But also another thing I'm excited about is if you look at the top, in the book, I highlight this, but it's still true, right? We look at Amazon, the top 10 data companies globally, right? Number 1 is IBM. IBM's business is data. Like they've always been a tech company. But within the top 10 globally, you have both Google and Amazon. Now, that's not their main business. That's just a side business. And so it highlights the idea that you have these companies that are startups, right? And they're going to take over the institutional world, because that's exactly what Google and Amazon did for data. That's going to happen in finance too. It's going to happen in a bunch of different aspects using blockchain in the crypto world. So I'm super look at the Circle IPO. I don't know if you paid attention to that, but it was $30 when it actually launched. And typically IPOs drop 15% ish when they launch. They build that in when they launch it. And what it's now, like 200. I don't know what it is today, but it's it is like 200, and you have all sorts of people. I should Google it while we're doing this. Right?
I
Yeah, it
haven't
is
done it
200. Look
today,
at
so
that.
I
It's
feel thinking,
200. I just guessed.
wow.
It's 204. So like the idea of like that's huge, right? And that just shows that the way that, and I think institutional people are buying Circle stock, right? I just, and also ARCA had come out, where I used to work, had come out, and they were really upset of their allocation because they gave it to more institutional players than the smaller, like the hedge funds that had been in crypto for a long time, which I get. So you're not helping out the people that helped you get to where you are, but it just is an eye opener for me about we're really on a roll here. We're really moving forward, and so I'm excited.
Yeah, and you mentioned, you kind of already asked this, but you were, because you talked about your experience like teaching the fashion class. I would have been terrified. I would have been like, I'm like,
I
I don't,
teach
I'm not big into fashion, so I
Yeah,
don't know
I
how
teach
I would have.
classes, but the idea of teaching fashion kids, do you know what's funny? I thought about it forever about what to wear. And then I was like, I can't, because that will overthink, like I'm overthinking this way too much. And I got there and they were all in athleisure, but the professors were dressed to the nines.
Oh, I can just imagine, like, how was his lecture? I couldn't get past his shirt. It just threw me off. I don't know why
Exactly.
he wore that. Like, so I have no idea what he just said. I just saw an ugly shirt talking.
Oh, that's funny. I had a really funny class. I taught to Chinese MBAs. It was in Mandarin. And it was in New York. They were on a tour back through the US. But that was hysterical because it takes one, it was so fun, but you have earphones on, and I know most everyone in the class probably speaks English, but then they would ask a question, and just culturally the questions are very long and they start with something like there's a preamble before they ask the question, and you have to stand there and nod listening, pretending like you're understanding the Mandarin that you're hearing. And it was funny, the first question started off with, when you walked in the room you looked like Celine Dion, and I thought you were going to sing. And then he asked some crypto question, which was really funny. But I was just like, you don't want to hear me sing. But the
But
same thing, it shows how international crypto and blockchain is, right? Look at all the conferences. I mean, we're in different countries, even though we're geographically close. But look, there's so many people out there, and this affects not just one market, it affects the global markets. And so that's super exciting for me. So, everyone out there is speaking different languages. I was recently invited to a conference where the conference is actually in French. It's not in English, which will make it hard for me because my French is not passable from 11th grade. But it's exciting just to recognize the depth and breadth of the global populations out there that are paying attention.
yeah, I attended a co-working space in Argentina last year for a couple months, and I would say half were Argentinian. The rest were just from different parts of the world.
Yeah, it's
And
so
so the
exciting.
people, and I don't know what your experience like. And it seems you've traveled a lot, but going to South America, it's difficult. Like literally traveling the planes, like from Europe, it's like a 15-hour, like that's the fast time. And so a lot of these people from around the world, they wanted to go. They took the 30-hour journey to Argentina to go there. So it was a very international experience for me, and I've lived in Argentina before, so it was still way different just to be surrounded by people from all over the world.
Absolutely. In Asia, I haven't done the Asia tour yet, and that's really because I have teenage boys at home. But I'm heading out there, and so I'm really excited about it. Just because I will say we Cadena recently sponsored an event in Amsterdam, and they had asked me to speak, which was lovely, and so we did a sponsorship. And it was the first time we'd done something in a long time. And what blew my mind was we had two people show up wearing Cadena sweatshirts. And that opened my eyes to how important the community is out there and how exciting it is to see people that believe as much as you believe in what you're doing. So that was kind of an eye opener to me. But I also am really excited about going into different markets. Where we just did something in Istanbul, where we have a huge community in Istanbul. I'm super excited about meeting our communities in Asia and actually working to develop them further. So it's heartwarming, because I also feel like what we're doing is yes, it is a job, but I feel like it's almost more like a calling and a passion too. Like it's, we're surrounded by really interesting people and we're learning all the time, and we're doing it because we want to make a difference.
So when's Kadena doing an event in Toronto?
Well, we're gonna start doing events. We didn't. I'm speaking at Blockchain Futurists, but that's in Miami next.
Yes,
But stay
unfortunately.
tuned. Stay tuned. It would
Yeah,
be great.
I was half joking. I didn't mean to put you on the spot, but I do, of course, I'm going to advocate for this, for Toronto being the co-founder of Toronto DAO.
Absolutely. We were in Toronto for Consensus and for Blockchain Futurist, and then we actually did an offsite in Montreal for the BD team. So we were supporting Canada, and Joel lives in Vancouver, so
Oh, well, at least Canada is represented.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
One thing I do want to ask you, because we're running out of time. Do you have any plans to write in the future, or is this a one and done book?
We'll see. We will see. So I would love it to be. So again, the book for me was about trying to write something that was educational and entertaining. I tried everything else out there. I read all the other books out there at the time, and they were really generally textbook oriented, which is hard to read. And so I wanted something that people could pick up and get through and actually have enough things they could tell their friend, right? I know this sounds funny, but like be able to explain something in a basic enough term that they can explain it to someone else so they actually really get it. So that was really a goal there. I would love it to be, how TradFi and DeFi have merged, or some sort of story, but what do we need education on next, right? I kind of feel like the idea of how DeFi is so similar to TradFi, but I don't know that we talked about this before. Books had to be 288 pages or 75,000 words. I don't know that there's that many words I would want to say on it, but we'll see. Well, never say never. I will say it was a labor of love because I actually hired an editor to, because I'm a math person and I was told I was never a writer. And so that's why it's funny. But my English teacher actually in high school, which is funny because anyway, so I hired someone to help me and I paid money out for it. So this is not a money maker with the book. It's really more education and how do we spread the word out there so people are not afraid.
Yeah, I get the education parts. I'm currently in the middle of writing a research paper for a university in Holland, and this is my first foray into writing myself, and it's not going to be that many words, but it's definitely not the money aspect. I wouldn't have done it if it was for the money, because it's not a money maker, so to speak. But it's kind of cool because I'm going to be speaking in Warsaw in October, and I think I'm going to be the only blockchain-based speaker. So it's going to be my job to do what you're doing at this event.
So, well, also it depends on your crowd. When you're speaking to a crowd that is not very familiar with the space, it kind of is how do you use basic terms to explain something that's complex? But so how do you explain it very basically? So yeah, that is interesting. Some people are more open than others. But yes, so what's been really interesting with the book is how it's resonated with people and the people that have reached out. So one of the big banks text groups had used it for their interns because they were so excited about how it tied together what the tech guys were doing, so they understood finance better. And so that was not, I had thought this would because I wear my finance hat because that's my experience. That's why it's so important to surround yourself that have very different, diverse backgrounds. That was super interesting to me. When I was in Dubai, I popped into an event and the person that I was there to see, I was late and they weren't there anymore. And so I would just turn around to leave. And I was tracked down by someone from Shanghai that had read my book and was a super fan. And I could never imagine to have super fans.
That's cool.
And so that was just moving that you were able to make the difference for somebody and help them out. My neighbors here in Connecticut went down to Brazil and they only know about my book because I had a little party when it came out. And when they were in Brazil, someone told them they should learn about crypto and they should read my book. And they were like, oh my goodness, that's my neighbor. So they think I'm famous, which is also humorous. So that was also interesting to me. And then I got a call from a billionaire who wanted to meet because they randomly picked it up in Midtown between meetings and to talk it through with them. And so it's so many different things about how do we move and grow this industry as well. So I absolutely welcome the conversations and the fact that it's resonated with people. So that's been exciting to me.
Yeah, that's incredible. I have to ask, has someone asked for your autograph yet?
Well, I do book signings, and and people, like, I sign the book. And so
Okay, that counts.
that's how I look at that. I would never expect to be, I don't know.
No random encounter asking for your autograph. That's next step.
No, it's not. That is not what we aspire to do, especially working in finance. In finance, nobody ever wants to be known. Everybody wants to be anonymous, because if they know your name in finance, it's because you did something wrong.
That's true. That's true. But I agree with what you're saying, but I do think it would be random cool if, like, with the super fan experience, they asked for your autograph. That would put me on a high for the rest of the day.
Well, I just want to make a difference.
Yeah,
So
and
we'll
I
see.
do want to say you're right about having to choose my terms, because the professor that's overseeing this, she has no crypto or blockchain experience, and I'm finding I'm having to, like, teach her on the way, sort of like give her. I'm just sort of saying words and not explaining terminology, because I'm used to people who already understand it.
Yeah.
Like, I'm talking with you, and she has no idea what the hell I'm talking about.
All that
Right?
jargon, you have to take it away. So there's apparently men's clubs up here, as in, I was surprised to hear there was like a town men's club. And what does that even mean? Because then I'm like, what about women? But what it is it's about 100 retired men that get together once a week and have a speaker come in. And so I was first asked in the town over, and I've just been asked here. And so it's just so interesting, because you're talking to people that are generally in their 70s, and men, but the engagement and actually the questions that they asked, they knew the industry. Not all of them, right? A lot of them didn't know much about it at all, but some of them knew a lot about the industry. So that was actually really exciting, because I thought the level would be zero when I got there. So it's always fun to see, to have these conversations with people, and then be surprised with their knowledge.
Yeah, and even I always thought it was because of me, but my mom would often be like, randomly mention famous people in this industry, or crypto projects, and she's like, "What's this?" And I'd be like, "How do you know about that?"
Yeah, it's funny. I know we're running low. Any last minute questions, or any questions from the crowd? I don't know if we can do that.
Yeah, Anna, if you don't mind, if people raise their hands, if they would like to ask a question, if you could give them speaker status.
Yeah, sure.
Or Anna, I know you are a big fan of the book. Do you have any questions?
I'm starting, the first chapter. So if anyone has any question, please let me know.
I know I kind of moved away from the book a little bit to talk about
No. This has been great.
This was a great talk.
The book, I feel like we probably have more crypto people on than the book. And the book was really aimed at kind of the non-crypto, but it goes into like what institutions are doing, why the industry is changing, even why people are afraid of change. And I also had to shout out to the whole world of the Matrix, because at the end, because my first crypto company was so Matrix oriented. It was funny.
That's funny. That's very funny. But yeah, it doesn't look like we have any questions, so we could end this a couple minutes early. But this has been very fantastic. You've been an amazing guest. I love how you got me way more involved than normal, and I loved it. And hopefully we can do a panel, and maybe you can be a guest on one of those panels again. You've just been fantastic.
I feel like people don't need to hear from me so much, but I love conversations. I love learning from everybody. So, and we're a community, right?
Exactly.
So, thank you so much for having me. Thank you guys all for tuning in and listening, and a shout out to all the KDA people out there. And I hope to talk to you all soon.
Yeah, and hopefully we'll see you in an event in Toronto again. And I hope everyone has a lovely weekend coming up and enjoying this nice weather in Toronto or wherever you are.
Fantastic.
Thank you so much, Annelise. Thank you, Matthew.
Thanks.